One Russian convoy entered the road. Minutes later, more than 40 tons of fuel, ammunition, and armored support were trapped in a burning corridor. Since early 2024, Ukrainian drone units have turned the front line into a battlefield where movement can be detected, tracked, and attacked within minutes. In one recent sequence, a Russian convoy of roughly 12 vehicles moved along a narrow road near the front, carrying fuel, ammunition, and armored support for units operating only a few kilometers away. From above, a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone followed the column for nearly 7 minutes, waiting until the vehicles entered a choke point. Then, an FPV drone dropped toward the convoy and struck a fuel truck. The explosion tore through the road, sending fire and black smoke into the air while at least 4 vehicles behind it were forced to stop. But the real story is not only the blast. It is how one strike turned an entire moving formation into a trapped target. Stay with us and subscribe to the channel, because this is where modern warfare is changing in real time. Since early 2024, the battlefield in Ukraine has entered a phase where danger often begins before a vehicle is ever hit. The first sign is not always artillery fire, a missile launch, or tanks crossing open ground. In many cases, it begins with surveillance. A small reconnaissance drone appears above a road, a tree line, or a supply route. And from that moment, every movement below can become part of a larger targeting process. In the earlier stages of the war, drones were mainly used to scout positions and guide artillery. But by 2024, their role had expanded into something far more constant. Ukrainian drone teams were no longer just searching for isolated targets. They were watching routes, tracking convoys, studying supply patterns, and waiting for the moment when movement became predictable. In some active sectors, drone activity increased by nearly 40% compared with the previous year. Along certain frontline routes, operators could observe dozens of vehicle movements in a single day, from armored units to fuel trucks and ammunition carriers. What once looked like routine movement on the ground could become visible from above within minutes. This creates a serious problem for any force trying to move in formation. A convoy may still have armor, numbers, and weapons, but if it is detected early, those advantages begin to weaken. The road ahead may look open to the drivers. From the sky, it can already be mapped, measured, and prepared for the next step. That is why the first stage of modern drone warfare is not the explosion. It is the observation that makes the explosion possible. At 4:20 a.m., the first movement was not a major assault. It was a Russian logistics truck moving several kilometers behind the front, carrying fuel canisters, spare parts, and ammunition boxes toward a temporary distribution point. On the ground, it looked like routine support traffic. From above, it looked like a moving link in a supply chain that Ukrainian drone operators had already started to track. A reconnaissance drone kept the vehicle in view for nearly 11 minutes. It did not strike immediately. It watched where the truck turned, where it slowed down, and where it finally stopped. That waiting period mattered. In practical terms, destroying the truck on the road would remove one vehicle. Following it to the supply point could expose several more. When the truck reached a small staging area, at least 5 other vehicles were already nearby. The site was not a major depot, but it was active enough to matter. A single FPV drone was then sent toward the area. It flew low across the last stretch of open ground and struck near the cargo section. The explosion was smaller than a large ammunition blast, but it was enough to ignite stored material, force nearby crews to move, and interrupt the supply flow for several hours. The point is not that one truck changed the entire war. The point is that one truck revealed a pattern. Fuel, ammunition, and repair equipment do not fight by themselves, but without them, armored units slow down very quickly. A delay of 18 to 30 hours at a forward supply point can reduce movement across an entire sector. Stay with us and subscribe to the channel because the next part shows what happens when the same method is applied not to one truck, but to an entire convoy trapped on a narrow road. At 8 a.m., the larger target entered the same kind of danger zone, but this time it was not a single logistics truck. It was a Russian convoy of roughly 13 vehicles moving along a narrow road near the front. The formation included fuel transport, armored support, and several supply vehicles carrying ammunition and repair equipment for units positioned only a few kilometers away. The road looked usable from the ground, but it gave the convoy very little room to maneuver. Muddy fields on both sides limited movement. Possible mine areas reduced the number of safe exits. In practical terms, the entire column had been forced into a route that could be watched, measured, and attacked from above. A Ukrainian reconnaissance drone had already been tracking the movement for nearly 8 minutes. It did not need to rush the strike. It only needed to wait until the vehicles entered the narrowest section of the route. Once the lead elements passed the choke point, an FPV drone dropped toward the column and struck near a fuel vehicle in the middle of the formation. The explosion was immediate. Fire pushed across the road. Black smoke rose above the tree line, and at least 4 vehicles behind the blast were forced to stop. The convoy did not collapse because every vehicle was destroyed at once. It collapsed because its movement was broken in the wrong place. That is the deeper meaning of this strike. A convoy built for movement became a line of exposed targets. The vehicles at the rear could not move forward. The vehicles ahead could not easily turn back. Within 3 to 5 minutes, the entire rhythm of the formation changed from advance to survival. From a tactical point of view, the first FPV drone did more than cause damage. It created a fixed point on the battlefield. Once that happened, follow-up drones, artillery observers, and targeting teams had time to study the scene. The blast was only the beginning. The real danger came after the convoy stopped. At 13 p.m., the most important question was no longer how the first explosion happened. The deeper question was why a convoy with armor, fuel, weapons, and numbers could lose control so quickly after one vehicle was hit. From the ground, a large formation can look powerful. It has weight, protection, and the ability to support itself. But from above, the same formation can become easier to read, because every vehicle is connected to the movement of the one in front of it. This is where drone warfare changes the calculation. A Ukrainian reconnaissance drone does not need to destroy every vehicle in the column. It only needs to identify the point where the formation is most vulnerable. If the lead vehicle slows down, the rest of the convoy compresses. If the fuel truck burns, the vehicles depending on that supply lose range. If the road is blocked, the convoy becomes predictable. In this case, the narrow route turned size into weakness. The vehicles could not spread out across the fields because mud and possible mine areas limited their exits. A formation that may have been moving at 28 kilometers per hour was reduced to almost zero in a matter of minutes. At least 5 vehicles were forced to wait, reverse, or search for another route under observation. That delay matters. A detour of only 6 to 9 kilometers can add more than 2 hours if the road is damaged, crowded, or under drone surveillance. For a supply column carrying fuel and ammunition, the delay can affect more than one position. It can slow artillery resupply, reduce vehicle movement, and force commanders to postpone the next step. The larger lesson is clear. In modern combat, a convoy is not defeated only when it is fully destroyed. It can be defeated when it is stopped, watched, and forced to make decisions under pressure. At 5:20 p.m., the battlefield had already shown one clear lesson. Drones could stop movement, expose weak points, and turn a convoy into a target. But the other side was not standing still. Russian forces had spent months trying to reduce the danger by adding cage armor, overhead shielding, metal frames, netting, and electronic warfare systems to many of their vehicles. these countermeasures were not meaningless. In several recorded situations, a first FPV drone failed to destroy its target because the warhead detonated against an outer frame instead of the main armor. In other cases, electronic warfare disrupted the control signal in the final seconds, forcing the drone off course before impact. For a crew under pressure, even a delay of 10 or 15 seconds can create a chance to move, turn, or escape the kill zone. But the deeper problem is consistency. Not every vehicle receives the same level of protection. One armored vehicle may have a well-built overhead screen. Another may carry rushed metal panels with open gaps near the engine deck, turret roof, or rear compartment. Some field modifications add protection in one direction while creating new weak angles from another. This is where Ukrainian drone operators adjust. A failed strike does not always mean wasted effort. It can reveal how the armor reacts, where the frame bends, and which section remains exposed. After repeated missions, operators learn to avoid the strongest surfaces and aim for the areas where protection breaks down under real conditions. The numbers show why this matters. A single protected vehicle may survive the first impact, but if it remains visible for 3 to 7 minutes, the chance of a follow-up strike increases sharply. In some engagements, crews faced not one drone, but 2 or 3 separate attempts aimed from different angles, and the contest is still evolving. Fiber optic FPV drones have begun to change the equation because they use a physical control line instead of a standard radio signal, making traditional electronic warfare far less effective. They are not perfect, but they show the direction of the next phase. Every defense creates a new method of attack, and every adaptation forces another response. At 9:30 p.m., the larger picture becomes clear. What happened to the convoy was not an isolated event, and it was not only the result of one FPV drone hitting one vulnerable point. It was part of a wider system, where reconnaissance drones, FPV drones, artillery, HIMARS, electronic warfare, and small operator teams are connected into one continuous process. This is the real change on the battlefield. A target is first detected from above. Its movement is tracked. Its route is measured. Its weak point is identified. Then a strike is launched, and after impact, the same observation network checks the result. If the target is still moving, another drone or another weapon can be directed toward it. In practical terms, the battlefield is no longer separated into scouting, attacking, and confirming. All three can happen inside the same cycle. That is why even a convoy of 12 or 13 vehicles can lose its strength so quickly. The vehicles do not all need to be destroyed. If one fuel truck burns, if one road is blocked, if one supply route becomes unsafe, the effect spreads. A delay of 4 to 8 hours can reduce ammunition delivery. A lost fuel vehicle can limit movement for several armored units. A damaged staging point can force commanders to change plans across an entire sector. From a strategic point of view, this shows that modern warfare is not only about the most powerful weapon. It is about the system that connects information to action. HIMARS remains a high-value weapon. Artillery still shapes the battlefield. Armored vehicles still matter. But none of them can operate effectively if they are blind, isolated, or cut off from supply. My personal view is that drones are not replacing every traditional weapon. Instead, they are exposing which forces can adapt and which forces are too slow to survive under constant observation. The side that sees faster, decides faster, and corrects mistakes faster gains a serious advantage. And that raises the deeper question. Do you think large armored convoys can still play a central role in future wars, or will they have to completely change how they move, hide, and fight under the pressure of drones? Share your thoughts in the comments because this debate is only becoming more important.